Although, let me rethink this one. This one, it's possible that certain poisons have vaccines. So possible here. You know that it was here. We talked about that. And we talked about vaccines for Hep B, C. There is not a vaccine, but there is a cure. And I suspect that some of you got confused between a vaccine and a cure. A vaccine helps to prevent. A vaccine gets rid of. So these two, they have vaccines and possibly some toxins. So the question is, okay, there are vaccines for which type of hepatitis? We have the choices you were given was Hep A, Hep B, Hep C, B, Hep A, Hep B, C, only Hep B, D, only Hep A. So the answer would be Hep A and Hep B. Okay. Let's move on to the next question. The good news about hepatitis A is that it doesn't last long and you become immune. Well, we like to stay optimistic, right? So I threw in those words, the good news. Well, when you consider everything else, it kind of is good news. We look for the silver lining on that cloud. Okay. When we talked about Hep A, we mentioned that this is the one that is kind of similar, kind of equal to like the flu. The symptoms are similar to that. The only difference is that there is some yellowing of the eyes and of the skin, and that the way it is contracted is through fecal matter poop that a new host inhales into their body. And yes, after you get hepatitis A, lasts maybe a week or two at the most, you can't get hepatitis A again. So there is immunity to hepatitis A. So the question is, number one, it doesn't last long. Well, remember, as compared to these two can possibly be chronic. So compared to these two, yes, it's short, and then you become immune. That is right. So let's see, 80% of you guys got it right. So good job on that. All right, next question. Everyone with Hep C qualifies for the treatment to cure Hep C. All right, 66% got this correct. And we went over the criteria because the medication for cure from Hep C requires a few ingredients. Number one, it's very expensive. Okay, so we have to look at the finances involved in the Hep C medication. Finances mean that the medications, the drugs to cure, are expensive. Who's going to pay this? Well, it's going to be either on insurance or the government. And both of these require that if we are going to invest money into curing this patient. What we want is to make sure that this is a good we won't be wasting our money. And how we can waste our money is if the individual is actively using drugs or alcohol. Or has a history of not able to consistently take their medication. Now we know this is tied into this. Any one of you who have to take medications, you know, once this gets in the mix, most likely you forget to take your medication. You become very inconsistent with it. So the government and insurance company says, well, until you get this under control so you can be consistent here, we're not going to invest money into you. We're not going to give you the cure until you're able to do that. Other things that can affect that as well is this person here has other what is called morbidities that can be, that will adversely, that means will be against will make it too hard for the body to handle the medications. Sometimes if this person is too weak because they have uncontrolled diabetes, as an example, or other things that might interfere with the treatment itself. So, but honestly, these two are the biggest thing. If so, they need a little proof that you are stable enough to take what is required to be cured, and it's a pretty strict schedule that you have to follow in medication, in adhering, staying close with the times necessary in order to take that medication. Okay. So the answer to this, no, not everybody qualifies to get the cure for Hep C. A lot of that is a yet, because this equals a yet, right? Once we get this under control, or this under control, then we may qualify for that. Next question: hepatitis A, hepatitis B, hepatitis C are caused by, I think 43 of you got this correct.
Percent.
Yeah, 43, sorry, 43% got this correct. So the over half missed this. And I think the reason why it was missed was because the word caused. I think that may have confused people as opposed to result. So if I would have exchanged the word caused with the word result, then the question would have read, Hep A, B, and C are the result of alcohol, viruses, and drugs. That would have been a more correct answer than E, which is the right answer. So the cause of hepatitis A, B, and C, the cause is from the Hep A, B, C virus. That's the cause. The result or the effect is when the body starts to malfunction. So I don't know. I think I just might end up throwing this question out. Okay.
100 for everything.
The other one was using drugs or having what does it say? Unprotected sex. See, so that went into results. So I think the fact that the other if you didn't choose A or E, you chose C. So I think you're all on the right track there. Nobody chose B or D. I thought B was a little creative. No. Yeah, I think I'll probably just throw that sucker out. Okay. All right. Hep C was another question where 47 got this correct. Now, Hep C is this question is very important to understand. So the question is, Hep B will eventually lead to cirrhosis of the liver. The truth is, if you said this was true,
It's untreated.
yeah, remember there are treatments for Hep B. There are medications. There are lab tests. Because remember, because there is no cure for Hep B, what we want to do, the goal is to keep the viral load down. That's the goal. And so if we can keep the viral load down, well then we keep the liver working, keeping it functioning well by monitoring how well the body is doing, medications, taking care of the body with healthy, nutritious food. Make sure you stay hydrated. Okay, make sure you are managing stress. All these work together to keep this down. So no, not everybody who has Hep C will eventually get cirrhosis of the liver. That is false. It can, if the person isn't doing their part in keeping this viral load down. Okay. Okay, and I think this is the last question. Cirrhosis of the liver can result in A, yellow skin, itchy skin, swollen skin, B, loss of memory, confusion, brain damage, C, bruises, vomiting, blood, pain, death, D, all the above. So let's see, we had 93% of y'all got this correct. And yes, the answer for that is D, all the above. Remember, this is all tied into the functions of the liver. So one of the functions that we discussed was its ability to break down red blood cells. Or in this case, magenta blood cells. Break it down into its parts, and parts of that is called bilirubin. The body excretes this out into your feces, which we know is poop. And this is what gives us the brown color of our poop. And when the liver cannot get this out of the body, what happens is that it gets stuck in the body. And we know this when the eyes get yellow, or the skin gets yellow as well. All right, number 2, itchy skin is because part of the function of the liver is to excrete ammonia, is to break down, it breaks down urea into a part, and one of the part of urea is ammonia. And so too much ammonia, because the liver can't get rid of it, because it's either inflamed or it's damaged. In this case, there's just not enough hepatocytes, the cells of the liver. There's just not enough of them to do the complete job that the body requires. So what happens is this ammonia stays in the system, and it is the symptoms of too much ammonia is itchy skin, confusion, loss of memory, and then this could, if it's untreated, okay, this could eventually lead to death, because now ammonia in the brain means that the brain cannot function properly, and so everything the brain helps to control the function of the body. So if it's confused, then the parts of the body are going to get the wrong messages from the brain, and it just can't work properly, and the end can be death with that. Okay. We get swollen skin because one of the functions of the liver is that it produces, these are proteins that help regulate, okay? Regulate means it helps balance the water in our body. And the water in our body is basically in 3 places. Number 1, within the cells themselves. Number 2, in our blood vessels. These are our veins and arteries. And number 3, the space in between these two. There's a space. That's called the interstitial space. And so what the liver does is, and the water has to be balanced between these 3. So the brain and the liver work, and the kidneys work in conjunction. They all work together in order to keep that balance in our body. So and these proteins here in our blood vessels, that's where they're at. Okay, they hang out in our blood vessels. So there's just not blood cells in our blood vessels. There are other proteins and all these other stuff that is in our blood. These help balance this. So when there's not enough of them, the water starts to do its own thing. So it helps control the flow of water. And when there's not enough, water kind of does its own thing. And what happens is that water then leaks out of the vessels and into this. And we see this from swollen legs, arms, testicles, stomach. Yeah, those are the main ones that we see. So yes, as you can see, the liver, it's important. Number 2, loss of memory here, right? Confusion, brain damage is really associated with that ammonia in the body. Bruising comes from, remember I said earlier that the liver is involved in clotting. So if it's not providing enough of the factors that are involved in clotting, then you get bruising and cuts that are difficult to stop bleeding. Vomiting, we know the vomit, blood from portal hypertension due to excessive alcohol intake. You're drinking too much for too long of a time, and the blood the pressure backs up into your esophagus, and those vessels then begin to break. And so long-term person with alcohol disorder begins to, when they vomit, then sometimes they'll notice that they vomit blood. And this is a very life-threatening event. You can literally choke on your vomit. You can die from that. Pain as well. So as the liver begins to die, as you can imagine, there's pain involved with that. And then yes, eventually, there's too much of all this going on in the body, and then the body eventually will shut down, and death is the result of that. So at this time, we'll open it up. Any questions, comments on the quiz for hepatitis?
Go on. You say the mic.
You turn your mic on if you have a question. All right, beautiful. Let's move on to
Questions or no questions?
questions. Yes.
Oh,
Any question, guys? No? We all clear. We all clear.
good. Thank you.
Beautiful. Okay.
No, nobody good. Everybody.
Hey, look, I got a question.
Okay.
Treatment for the Hep C, how long is that?
It depends. It depends what medication that you're on. Some are as short as like 2 months, and others can go, I think it's 6 months. Whatever medication that they choose is based on what is called so if you are a candidate, what your doctor or whoever is going to be taking care of your treatment, what they'll do is a blood test to determine your what is called a genome. The genome is the type, it's really the type of Hep C you have. So within Hep C, there are small little variations between the hepatitis virus that a particular person has. So what they do is they'll check to see which type of Hep C you have, and then they'll prescribe the treatment that best treats that type. It's kind of like HIV is the same thing. There are variations of the HIV virus, and so the doctor, based on the genome, will prescribe the medication that is best treats that type of HIV virus. So it'll just depend.
Can I follow it up with something else?
Say that again?
Follow-up question.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
What if I have other underlying conditions? Will they treat Hep C along with that one for, say, like, I don't know, HIV, cancer?
Well, that would be something that that they will determine the risks and how severe those other issues are within an individual. So that is something that is taken on an individual basis. There isn't an overall. If you have diabetes, you're out. You know, those type of things. If you have HIV, you don't qualify.
Does the finances come into?
Yeah, finances too.
Yeah, what they want to spend you.
Yeah. So, especially if yeah, you know, it just depends. It depends.
Okay.
So, and sometimes if at that time the doctor doesn't think it's a good idea to start treatment, then usually they'll have a certain criteria. For example, if you're diabetic and your A1C is too high, then the criteria is that it'll be within the normal range for a certain period of time before they would undergo the treatment. Or same thing with the HIV, if the viral load becomes like undetectable or within a certain range, then at that time, then they'll go ahead and do the treatment. But it's individual, it's individualized.
And then a third part of my question. Once I get treated and cured for Hep C, can I catch it again?
Let's see.
Can you catch it again?
Hep A is no, right? Hep A was no, right? Immune? Or what?
Yeah, Hep A is no. You know what? That's a really good question, and I don't know the answer to that. Maybe someone can look that up and see what they find, what the research has shown with somebody who has been cured, recatching the Hep C. Now, people have only been, they've only had this cure only for a few years, so I don't know what the data would be about that. So yeah, that's a really good question. You know, I don't know the answer to that.
All right. Thank you, Luke.
All right, any more questions? All right, let's move on to COVID-19. Let me pull that up on my phone. If anyone saw the governor yesterday put out what is called new mandates, new protocols, requirements that California is going to certain parts have to follow because, like we talked about yesterday, last week, that we have to do our best to protect ourselves. If we don't, we're at risk. And let me tell you, this type of stress for a lot of people causes what is called denial. And they feel
Excuse
that
me real quick.
the yeah.
Pretty sure that's-
Oh, okay.
Real quick, it says, no, once you get Hep C, you're not immune to it, and yes, you can get it again.
Okay, all right. There's the answer to that. And if you can recall, there's a few, we talked earlier in the year about some communicable diseases that, that also do not have cures. Okay, all right. So as I was saying, you know, the stress sometimes of disease like COVID-19 can cause some people to react to the stress by going into what we call denial, and they'll just think that they're just, it's not real, and or they can't catch it. So they'll behave in a way that underlines those two conclusions that they have about a new stress like COVID-19. And denial is sometimes part of a reaction to a stressful event. You know, somebody tells you that somebody died. You know, sometimes our first response is, no, that's not true. That could not happen. All right, so not uncommon, but and sometimes people come around, hopefully, you know, they will, but we do our best to control what we can, and that is ourselves, and educate, and hopefully we'll get everybody to do the best they can to keep themselves safe. Okay. All right, let's talk about COVID-19. All right, question number 1. Which of the following statement is true about a virus? All right. A, it is about the same size as bacteria. Okay. B, it is somewhat of a rare life, quote, life form. C, is an obligate intercellular parasite. And D, can cause diseases in plants. Let's see, how many got that right? So we have 50% got this right. The other ones, I was kind of tricky on this. All right. All right, so we have, remember we talked about inter and intra. And I think maybe some of you just saw that word and you just went through it without looking at, these are called prefix. Whether we were talking about the correct prefix to that. And we know that when it comes to viruses, and COVID-19 is no exception, it is intra, which means it has to be inside the cell. Has to be inside in order to replicate. It doesn't do it outside, and inter would be outside. So that was, like I said, a little tricky. So the answer, okay, let's go. And we know that when we talked about sizes, right? And I use the analogy of the Empire State Building. Bacteria, remember, went up to the 3rd floor. Virus, about 7 inches. So although both are are microscopic. Even though they're both microscopic, viruses are much smaller than a bacteria. So they're not about the same size, okay? Somewhat of a rare life form. Remember we talked about the billion times a billion times 10 trillion, the most common quote life form on the planet. So it is not rare. It is, in fact, the most common. So the only answer in that we eliminate, and we know that they can cause infection in every life form on the planet. So the, plants are not excluded. So the answer to that was D. They can cause infection in plants. All right. Question number 2, COVID-19 stands for, I think everyone, just one person didn't get this one right. You guys all did really fantastic on this. The answer is D. CO stands for corona, VI stands for virus, D stands for disease, and 19 identifies the year that it was first reported, 2019. So that together is referred to COVID-19. Okay, so the next true or false question was, you had to think about this, right? So the question was, once a virus enters your body, it can infect all organs. And the truth is, remember, they're very specific. So the COVID-19 infects the respiratory. And the respiratory system. And this includes the lungs. Anything, the parts that are involved in breathing, the lungs, the tube called the trachea. Trachea. I spelled it right. Wrong. Trachea. There you go. We have the mouth, the nose, sinuses. So they hang out here. One of the tests is that they stick that long Q-tip up your nose to see if they can capture some of the virus that are hanging out in your sinuses. HIV is specific for your immune system. Have A, B, C to your liver. This is COVID. This is also the flu as well. It's a respiratory system. Your cold, your common cold is respiratory system. So yes, they're specific for a type of tissue or organ within the body. So the answer to that, it's false. Now, can the whole body respond to the infection? The answer is yes, because it's all connected. So even though the virus is not attacking a specific organ, it can be affected, because when you're having trouble breathing, right, will that affect how your liver functions if it's not getting enough oxygen? The same thing with your immune system, with your heart. If you're not taking in enough oxygen, then your heart is going to start working harder, and that affects how the body functions. If your brain isn't getting enough oxygen, then yeah, it's not going to be able to function correctly. So it can be affected by a virus in one of these areas without being infected by the virus itself. Okay. The chain of infection refers to, this one made me very, very proud. That just goes to show that repetition works, right? Everyone, I talk about the chain of infection, and 100% of you got this sucker right. That's awesome. All right. Okay. COVID-19 is believed to be spread by. So we talked about the chain of infection, right? And the complicated chain of infection, we have an infectious agent. And what we're talking about is COVID-19, right? Where is it hanging out? Well, this is hanging out in the respiratory system. That's where it's hanging out. Okay, now in order to infect, it's got to get out of here. It's got to get out. How does it get out? Well, it gets out through the mouth, nose, on water droplets. That's the taxi out of the respiratory system. Gets out through sneezing, right? Coughing. People touch their face, their mouth, and they transfer that onto an object. And then in somebody new, it's got to get in. So how does it get in? Well, it gets into the mouth and nose. And this mouth and nose has to be a specific organism. So in this case, it's another human being. And then we start all over again. So if we look at the choices that we have, A, infected Chinese bats, this is what the theory is, that's how it got. It got from a bat here into a human being. That's how it initially got into humans. They think was from bats, but how it has been spread to be a pandemic is not from bats. It's from human to human. B, cannot be spread because it is not a real thing. C, lungs and mouth droplets and snot from from an infected person, and D, respiratory droplet, blood, poop, and urine from infected people. At this time, unless there comes later on some data that shows otherwise, at this time, it's from
Okay.
water droplets from an infected person. Okay, so coming out through here, snot, out the nose, and nose snot, coughing, touching of things, and then transferring that on to the new person. So the answer to this question was letter C. Okay, next question. Which is not a common COVID-19 infection symptoms? You guys really rocked on that one. 90% got this right. A, skin rash, even though it's part, it can be symptoms. The three most common were what you guys got right is fever, dry cough, and tiredness. Those are the three most common symptoms of COVID-19 infection. Now, as we move on, though, what becomes the most common can change. We'll see, but at this time, it's those three. According to World Health Organization, what percent of people recover from COVID-19 infections without needing hospital treatment? 40%, 20%, 60%, 80%. If you were, you know, we all tune out sometimes during any type of lesson. If you happen to tune out when I put out this specific percentage, then you kind of had to do a little crap shot on this one and just chose. And they always say, if you're not sure, to choose C. In this case, if you chose C, you got it wrong. The truth is, let's see, how many of you chose C? So only two did. So two of you chose 40%, two chose 20, two chose 60, but the answer was D, 80%. Now that being said, remember, 100. If we look at it this way, 100 people are infected, 80 will recover. That still leaves 20 that have to be hospitalized. Still a big chunk of people. Okay, so we still have to do our part to keep ourselves healthy, which lead us to our next question. Anyone can catch COVID-19 and become seriously ill. The answer to that is true, because the 20 that are needing hospitalization at the beginning of the pandemic, it appeared to be mostly people over 60 that had other types of issue going on within the body. Now that is starting to change. So anyone, folks, anyone can become seriously ill with COVID-19. Let's open it up for questions, comments on COVID-19.
Yeah. Hey, look, Sal.
Yes.
One of the guys after last week's presentation, he had a question. I think it was something that how does one determine how a virus is named or deemed? How can I put this? How do we know that the virus is only spreadable through moisture, per se, for droplets?
Yeah, that's a really good question. They do tests, and they make a determination. Now, it's really over time. Time will really dictate whether the only way that this is spread is from water droplets. Only time will tell that. So we've had, for example, measles has been around for a very long time, and we have shown that is spread in the air. So that's how it's spread. And so over time, I mean, and the same with the HIV and Hep C's and other colds, flus. It's time that will develop in like the character of the virus, how it behaves. So right now, it appears to be that, but yeah, we'll find out.
Isn't that like confidence intervals too? The researchers decide to a level of confidence, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
like 99% or whatever.
Right. So, of course, with all type of research, there are always exceptions to the rules. So, at this time, we don't know, but maybe there's another way it can be caught. But at this time, it appears that the protective gear it does have an impact on the spread. So that kind of supports this idea that it's spread through water droplets. But we can't say with 100% certainty that is true.
Okay. I got a second part to that question too.
Okay.
Should we prepare, or do we know if there's a mutated strand of COVID-19?
Well, with most viruses, there will be, there's always a possibility of mutation. Mutation means that, let me just put this up here. So when you think of a mutation, what comes to mind is a teenage mutant turtles, right? So they are turtles, but they aren't what we typically think of as a turtle. These guys they know martial arts, and they wear bandanas, and their guru is a rat. So although they are turtles, they aren't your typical turtle. So what happens with viruses is that usually starts off as with the coronavirus. Is that the receptor sites, these parts that latch on to the cells of the respiratory system. And what our immune system does is that what it's trying to do then is recognize this and cap it off. Caps it off so it can't attach. So sometimes what these viruses can do is they put out a different version. And sometimes these different versions, so they keep the immune system guessing, and like in the cold and the flu, is that every year that virus changes these, and the body doesn't have an immune response to this new one. It has to the old one, but not to the new one. And so every year, that's why every year were at risk for the flu or a cold, even though we had it the year before. So with COVID-19, what appears is there is a possibility of what they call mutation, and we don't know. That could happen in the future. But what they were saying originally was that there was two versions of the COVID-19, one that infected Italy and New York, and the other ones that infected the rest of the world. That's why it seems that the one strain that went to Italy and New York seemed to be a little more what is called virulent. It was a tougher one that caused more severe symptoms than what came here to California. I don't know what has become of that theory, whether that has been proven or not. I haven't heard anything about that. So I'm thinking that at this time, not enough data has been gathered concerning that. I think all the energy right now is going into keeping people safe and keeping people out of the hospital. Any other questions? Did that answer your question, Sal?
Yes, Luke, thank you.
Okay. Any other follow-up questions or any other questions about any diseases that you have that you would like to be answered as best I could? I'd like to see all you guys that are in the homes are wearing their masks. Fantastic. If you're by yourself, don't necessarily need to wear a mask.
You. A little mic.
Right here?
Yeah, yeah.
That's it, Ben. No more questions?
Any other? Do a countdown of 10, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Well, thank you all for attending. I appreciate that. I hope that the information that was given to you, I hope that you found it helpful for you and your family. And remember, the goal is to be able to do our part in staying safe, but not letting that lead our life. We don't want to lead our life with fear. We want to be cautious, but to let love, kindness, joy, hope, peace, and faith and forgiveness, let those things lead our life, not fear. Okay? So stay strong, and remember the staff is always here for you during this time, and as we move on with our journey through life. Okay? So thank you all again, and God
Thank
bless.
you, Luke.
Yeah, you're getting texts here, everyone's thanking you. Okay.
Okay. We're out. I need to go.
Thank you, Luke. Have a good one. Stay safe.
What's up, Mike?
Here, she just left.
Have a good one, y'all.